Well, here's home for another couple of hours, hopefully, at least, depending on what comes into the trap this evening and how far the temperature drops. It isn't forecasted to hit single figures, but it'll probably get quite close to almost reaching that point. This is, of course, Red Hill at Eakring. A few hours ago, I was wandering around here in glorious blue skies, and it was an absolutely lovely day today. 27th of August, so we're moth trapping for a couple of hours at Eakring. Isn't that just a lovely sky? The first moths are starting to appear on the wing, so I need to finish this tea and see if the generator will fire up. It's been a while. It does make a nice backdrop. This is the kind of backdrop that you don't get from Sherwood Forest, or from very few sites in Sherwood Forest. You can attain something similar on Budby, but of late this site, the Eakring area, is drawing me more than Sherwood Forest does. Because of its open nature and more varied habitat, there's always the chance of something that I've not had before, and that's something that all moth trappers aim for. They continually aim to trap and record new species, and this provides just that opportunity. It's a nice, presumably pipistrelle bat that's just flown at about 4 or 5 feet above the ground. Hopefully I don't get plagued too much by them. And here's the first of the moths that are in. There's 2 of these in. This is orange swift. Now all the swift moths, which includes ghost moth, which is considerably bigger than all the other swifts, they all have this sort of characteristic shape. They also have the same kind of action when arriving at the light. They're quite buzzy. They tend to fly around like headless chickens, but in circles. It's very distinctive, and I'll show you one which has just arrived. And here's one. Watch it settle down now. But they always act like this. It's almost as if the head's, well, the front part of the body is super glued to the sheet. In fact, there's another one in now, so that makes 3 in. And they eventually settle down. But this manner of activity, you can't even say it's flight, is the same for all swifts. But they are an attractive moth. If I can just move that out. These are beautiful. And this time of year, once you get into August, orange swift is the one that you will trap, and you can get it in gardens, providing you've got some sort of open grassy area quite near to you. Now, orange swifts, like all swifts, tend to arrive early on at the light, and they're often the first species in, especially if you're trapping in a grassy habitat such as this. Now, we've now got 5 that have arrived. As you can see, it is a very attractively marked. The one in the centre of the screen there is particularly orange and quite apt for the species name, but others are a dirty sort of brown colour than that. But it's the only swift species that you're going to trap in the latter part of August anyway. The others are long since finished for the year. This is a great place to trap, actually. It's pleasantly warm, even though the temperature will drop a couple of more degrees, certainly while I'm here. But it's a lovely sky. It has the shaping up of a decent night for noctilucent clouds. It just looks like that kind of sky. And there seems to be a little bit of pale, very high cloud over there, but we'll see. Noctilucent clouds are absolutely beautiful. They're clouds on the edge of the atmosphere and can be seen quite often, or mostly through the summer months when the sky doesn't get totally dark, and they appear as either white or very pale blue, a beautiful pale blue. And they're not low-level cirrus clouds, they are far higher than that, but it's a display that you can look for usually low in the northern sky or northeastern sky throughout the summer nights. They're quite beautiful. Occasionally you can get better displays where the noctilucent clouds are higher up in the sky, but they are a beautiful phenomenon. So I'll keep my eye on that. I do love a noctilucent cloud, me. Meanwhile, back to the trapping. Here's the moth that's going to make up the largest total, at least that's what I'm anticipating. This is square spot rustic, which occur in numbers and are incredibly variable. Now, I always struggle to differentiate square spot rustic with small square spot, but that's something that I've not learned still over the years, and I've just had to refresh myself now. But square spot rustic, they are very, very variable. They can range from quite pale brown to virtually black and almost featureless, to be honest. And the best way of identifying those is just on the sort of general jizz of the characters and the resting posture. But it's a moth that you'll get in numbers whether you're trapped at home or out and about. And the moths are turning up in numbers now. We've just had a brimstone come in. There's a couple of snouts. The first of the large yellow underwings is in. Green carpet. So it's not turning out so bad. Well, there's ruby tigers. Another moth that has just dropped in as well. I'd quite forgotten about these having a second brood, but beautiful, very easy to identify. There's nothing else in the UK like this, and that advent that you can see just poking out from underneath the wings is incredibly distinctive. They're a cracking moth, and the caterpillar of course is lovely as well. We're doing quite well for species now, so we've reached a point where moths are starting to come in. As this ruby tiger makes a run for freedom. But something else that does need freedom is this chap, or should I say lady. Every mother will know exactly what this is. Most people will also recognise what it is, and it is of course a hornet. And one of the downsides, or potential downsides, of trapping in the autumn months is you can get these arriving at the light in various numbers. I tend to pot them up. I have every respect for hornets, as should everybody. I did have one start to go down my shirt once. What a night that was. But I remained unscathed, probably much to most people's annoyance, but you have to appreciate and love these things. They are fabulous. Just look at that underneath. And providing you don't get too many, then they're okay just to pot up. They settle down after a bit, and then at the end of the night you can open the lid of the pot and throw them as far as possible. I don't kill them, there's no need to kill them. I'm usually at Red Hill here at Eakring, you never get troubled with a lot, but in woodland, trap there at your peril sometimes. I remember did it to myself. We pulled up at Gamston Wood once near Retford. Parked the car, set everything up, switched the light on, and within 5 minutes we were inundated with these. And I can tell you, that was an entertaining process as well. Dilly's had the sense to go straight into the car and shut all the doors, so it was left to yours truly here to handle the situation. But again, I remain unscathed. But you need to look at these, or just look out and just be careful of them. And if you do get them at the light, just keep an eye out where they are. I've seen that ruby tiger's come to say hello again. Lovely things, ruby tigers. This one's quite worn and the wings are very shiny, look. So I best start writing down some of these moths. And a hornet. Well, there's a decent number of moths coming in. Most are square spot rustics and cetaceous Hebrew characters. It's not all moths though, because the hornet count is now up to 3. All safely potted up. It's typical fare at the moment. Nothing unusual. There's some very small examples of couple of moths. There's a tiny little cetaceous Hebrew character just here, and the green carpet that has been in somewhere was a little larger than a pug. But I suppose we have to be thankful that with the summer that we've had, we've got some second broods at all. And here's the characteristically shaped snout. There's a couple of these in, possibly have had 3 in. Very easy to identify. There's very few moths that are this shape, and this is the most likely one that you're going to trap. It will occur obviously in gardens and in more rural areas, such as the habitat we have here at Eakring. But very easy to identify. So this triangular shape, the wings are, or the forewings are slightly wavy on that bottom edge as you look at them now, and you can see why they are given the name snout, because they have really long palps at the front, incredibly long, but a very common moth, especially in rural locations such as this. Well, we're just approaching 10 o'clock, 2200 hours in old money. There's a slight change now to what species are coming in. There's a steady rate of moths coming in, but it's now less square spot rustics and cetaceous Hebrew characters coming in. So far the total's 21 of the former and 19 of the latter, and there's 1 or 2 large yellow underwings starting to sort of briefly come in, smash around the light and headbutt everything possible. Typical large yellow underwing kind of trait. Some more moths come in, but that seems to be the species that's come in. There's been an angle shades dropped in. In terms of species, it's nothing terrific. Micros, it's still very poor, with the Piphius postbatana, the light brown apple moth. I do have 1 tortrix to take home, photograph and identify, but it's very poor for micros. It's still a nice night, but the temperature is starting to drop. I can feel it now. There's another large yellow underwing. Lands quite nicely on the sheet. That won't last. It didn't. They are boisterous. I say, I'm glad I don't use a Robinson trap, because if you had a dozen of those in a trap, you're not going to have a deal of anything else left, or potentially. But we still await any kind of migrant. I am surprised at that, very surprised. And here among the rabid large yellow wonderwings which are coming in now is this beauty. This is the most colourful moth of the night by far, and this of course is a brimstone. Absolutely stunning moth. Completely neglected purely because it's common. You'll get this in your garden very frequently, but its commonness shouldn't detract from the fact that it is one of our most beautiful moths. They really are a cracking species, and this one seems particularly fresh. It's in immaculate condition. I do love brimstones, common or not. And at last we have a migrant species. This is a characteristically shaped species, and it's a rush veneer. Now this probably occurs annually in Nottinghamshire. It's a regular migrant to the county, but it's not a species that I don't think any moth trapper will trap annually. With it being a pyrrhid, there's no easily available data to be had on just how often these are caught in Nottinghamshire. But I certainly don't record them annually by any means, and quite often it's a species that are flush during the daytime. If walking through heather in the heathlands of Sherwood Forest, I can turn up the odd one or two of these, but this one is worn. It doesn't look a deal, does it? Nonetheless, it is our first migrant of the evening. The temperature's dropping, there's a dew forming as well, but we've got plenty of moths, and moths are still coming in, but the range of species is still quite poor. But nice to get one migrant, even though this doesn't look the most sparkling and exciting of moths, does it? Well, as you can see, there's plenty of moths on the ground sheet and on the side of the trap itself. They're all starting to settle down quickly. That's coming in now. The species range isn't great. It's typical of what you'd expect though this time of year. But we'll give it a bit longer and see what else can drop in. Well, as often is the case, a couple of minutes after just filming that last piece about the rush veneer coming in, another one's just dropped in. Well, I netted it as it was just flying over. They're a very characteristic shape when flying. They're pretty much instantly recognisable. This is how it can go. It's funny, you can go hours without getting a certain species, and then all of a sudden 2 or 3 will occur within minutes, sometimes simultaneously. I've had that happen many times over the years. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, whether they were just a pure coincidental arrival together, or whether it could be the start of something a bit more interesting. But say, rush veneer is a species that I don't trap, and did this myself, never trapped regularly at all. I think from the garden we've only had once, but I mean, it can turn up absolutely anywhere. Which, something like that just spurs you on a little bit. It makes you say, well, I'm going to stay out a little bit longer. I don't know what time we are now. We're probably on about 10:30, so we're approaching 2 hours. But there's quite a good dew forming, but you expect that this time of year. And of course, late August being late August means now that we've got no twilight. The sky actually gets properly dark this time of year. That's a bad sign. Unless you like dark nights, of course. Well, there's still plenty of moth activity, but nothing say exciting or to write home about. It's all the usual stuff, common wainscots, small square spots, square spot rustic, and cetaceous Hebrew characters. There's been a light emerald that's dropped in, but I think it's been 2 hours now, so I think a steady packing up is the order of the day, but I've enjoyed it. Well, the temperature's gone down to 9, which makes what's in here more docile. Well, all that's left to do now is to release the hornets